Hello, my friend. This is Designer Market Update for Thursday, January 16th, 2025. So let's quickly go over some Bitcoin price action, and then I want to kind of get into some of the comments to yesterday's broadcast because there were some very insightful points that I thought were made that I think it could be useful to just talk about a little bit more. So Bitcoin's back above 100,000, at least as of right now, about almost 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursday, as I said, January 16th. 2025. I saw that hash prices were actually up to about $58. And that actually, to me, is pretty impressive, given the fact we were at like 53 not that long ago. The network hash rate is hovering just over 800. You know, if we can see hash prices really kind of get up into the $60 range, maybe the mid 60s, even like low 70s, that would be phenomenal. Now, insofar as our leaderboard, so to speak, SLNH, whose official name escapes me at the moment, but it was a recommendation from a viewer of our broadcast, said, hey, why not add SLNH? And as of right now, they're up about almost 5%. So they're kind of in the top spot. BitDeer in second, Hut in third. I'm going to focus a bit more again on Bitfarms today. So Bitfarms, as of right now, is down about a penny to about $1.66 a share. Kind of a mixed bag today. You'd think with Bitcoin being up the way that it is, that you'd see a little bit more follow through with the Bitcoin mining sector. But as of today, that is not the case. So I wanted to address some of the comments that were made, because again, as I said, some really, really great comments. Forgive me in advance if I'm not reading off the full username associated with each comment, simply because the way my little display here shows it kind of gets cut off a little bit, so I apologize for that. Someone, I guess, going by Neville F, and it sort of gets cut off. I think all shareholders would benefit from telling Ben, meaning Ben Gagnon, the CEO of Bitfarms, to stop the philosophical talk and constantly ask him, what have you done for me today? We've heard this man's visions and thoughts for years, and the stock price just kept getting dragged through the mud. Okay, listen, this I think is a very understandable sentiment, right? I heard a fair amount of detail yesterday as to what the, sort of like the concrete plans appear to be for Bitfarms. Now, I understand that, hey, look, when you're the CEO of a company, right? Not that I've been the CEO of a publicly traded company, but I've talked about this enough to sort of get the sense, right, that you really kind of have to be out there advocating for the vision, right? And advocating for like where the company is going to be going. And yeah, there does tend to be a little bit of that emphasis on like, philosophy, if you want to call it that. Hey, this is kind of like what we want to do and how we want to get there. What have you done for me today? I think we're going to find out really soon, right? Like at the beginning of February, we'll find out what January's production numbers were. We'll find out what progress has been made with regard to deploying hash rate. But I get it, though. I really do get it. Now, to be fair, like Ben has only been the CEO of the company for about, maybe 6-7 months now. So again, I get where you're coming from. I do. I'm still of the belief, though, that, we need to cut Ben a little bit of slack here. I mean, again, I felt like he did get into some detail yesterday in the presentation, and I feel as if, though, it's not even a feeling. It's more of like based on what I'm reading, right, and what I'm processing, it seems as if though Ben is really, really focused on moving Bitfarms forward. And if Bitfarms moves forward, the stock price should follow. Okay, there's a comment in Spanish here. I'll address that in Spanish. Yo hablo un poco de español. Bueno, trato de hablar un poco de español, pero a veces mi español no me sale muy bien. Pero veremos a ver. So I'll answer that in the comments itself. One fellow says here, this is, let's see, Andy, apologies again. Sold 30% of my bag, still holding 45,000 shares, it seems. Down 25%. I hear you. Thomas, thanks for the forecast. I have, these are some strange comments that come in. Kind of like spam comments. They're asking about what kind of wallet to use for USDT. If you see any of that in the comment section, just kind of give it a thumbs down or flag it, please. no offense to Thomas, right? If it's a sincere question, but I'm not the guy to ask about what kind of wallet to use for some sort of random coin. Hey, Stephen, this is Ben Fishman. Hey, Stephen. Hi, Stephen. Does anyone know if Ben did address why they are not improving their exahash? 20,000 miners arrived at Stronghold, so it does not make sense why they cannot grow their exahash. Just wondering if this was talked about at all. So I don't recall there being any specific mention with regard to those 20,000 miners. Ben did say, if I'm not mistaken, that they are fully, like their growth plans for the first half of this year are fully funded, right? And by that, I assume it includes basically, hey, getting to a bare minimum of 21 exahash. Now, you may be asking, hey, but like, does the 21 exahash, does that include these miners that were sent to Stronghold, or is that something different? So when we get our January production update, my operational assumption is that those miners have got to have been plugged in already, right? Because they've been a Stronghold now for a while. So I suspect there may be some commentary, right, in the business update portion of the January 2025 production update that might address that issue. Hey, where are we at with our exahash? Hey, are we reaffirming, as seemed to have been the case yesterday morning? Hey, we're reaffirming 21 exahash. Can they grow beyond that? Can we get a bit higher, given the fact that, yeah, we've got all this capacity as Stronghold that if you upgrade the fleet, right, you could definitely add more exahash, it would seem. So to answer your question, it wasn't specifically addressed, but I do think it's going to get addressed very soon when we get that production update. So thank you again, Ben Fishman. And again, apologies if I'm getting the names a little bit off. Sometimes this kind of gets cut off the way I'm reading it here. CR, great production. Many thanks. Okay. Well, thank you for the kind words. Okay. So here's something from King Stick, I think. Yeah, sorry. Again, it's kind of hard for me to read this. It's very, very fine print here. Hope Ben G is considering to move their headquarters in the US. Okay. That is a very, very interesting point. And, given the fact that probably the bulk of this company, meaning BitFarms' operations, are going to be in the US, might it make sense? Now, hear me out here. Whatever space Stronghold Digital Mining happens to be leasing, or whatever the arrangement is in New York City, would it make sense for BitFarms to maybe assume that lease, try to consider that as their new corporate headquarters? Not saying that, I think the team seems to be concentrated right outside of Montreal. And look, you want to work kind of like where you enjoy living, and there's some considerations there. But to the extent there's going to be a headquarter shift, the acquisition of Stronghold might pave the way for that to be a bit easier, given the fact that Stronghold does, at least, as far as I know, they still have access to some office space in New York City, and I believe also out in Pittsburgh. So, some options exist to potentially move the headquarters and, from an SEC filing perspective, maybe adopt more of a US-centric, filing process, if that makes sense. Okay, MJ7Den. I had huge hopes for SDIG's carbon capture technologies. I once envisioned carbon capture plants being built all over the world as a type of power plant that scrubs carbon out of the air. Apologies if I'm getting a little bit mixed up with words here, but basically reversing humanity's carbon footprint in a huge attempt to right climate change. I think Bitfarms will eventually be sold to a larger mining/data company. That too will drive up the stock price. So the technology, as far as I understand it, and I ought to reach out to Carbonetic. That's SDIG's partner, or I guess presumably had been their partner with regard to this pilot program out in Scrubgrass. Because, it's not that it wasn't capturing carbon. It was, and presumably might still be. The issue is that, and now I'm blanking on the name of this organization, but it's like the NASDAQ-owned registry, which would, ideally have sort of given its blessing to this particular carbon capture project, opted not to, simply because the source of the materials being used to capture carbon stem from a mine waste-to-energy facility. And so, based on their criteria, they just didn't I guess, feel like it was like a suitable thing to certify. Now, that doesn't mean that that carbon's not being captured, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't go into the market and potentially sell these carbon capture credits. Now, I didn't hear Ben speak about this at all during yesterday's presentation. I know that it was not factored into the due diligence, right? And it wasn't factored into sort of like the deal structure in terms of the amount of money that Bitfarms agreed, to pay for Stronghold. So, hey, where does that leave that particular project? To me, it seems like it's maybe more of a background thing at this point, only because, when you hear Ben talking about how they want to really ramp up pulling energy into these sites, meaning at Scrubgrass and at Panther Creek, it would seem to me as if though the majority of that real estate would be used for like data centers, not so much for carbon capture. But let's see, because, there are some other potential avenues to explore, but until we hear more directly from Bitfarms, I don't want to speculate too wildly. Okay. Artis mentions, and again, it's cut off the name, Mara, meaning, Mara Technologies, I guess is what their name is these days, formerly known as Marathon Digital Holdings, right? Mara does synthetic HODL and loans out Bitcoin. Bitfarms needs to move to the US. Yes, okay, so that's the second comment that mentions it would be useful if Bitfarms moves to the US, and it's intriguing to hear that Mara, or Marathon as I still like to call them, do synthetic HODL. Okay, that's very intriguing. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to look into that a bit more. Okay, so Christopher, appreciate the update. Keep up the good work. Just awaiting the day that Bitfarms or SDIG PR bodies announce the deal is closed and dilution of Bitfarms is complete. I was day trading this stock until I got stuck in a position. Yeah, I know that feeling, my friend. Whew, almost a year later, I'm down 40K in my Bitfarms position. However, I've studied Bitfarms and have confidence that my current average can not only be met, but also exceeded for a sizable profit. Let's see where this trade goes. And I see that that particular comment got 4 thumbs up. So listen, we all know what it's like to trade a stock. You suddenly find yourself upside down, and then it's like, wow, my thesis just went out the door. I got to hold on to this thing. I don't want to necessarily take the loss. I see the upside potential in the name. And then it's like, before you know it, you're in it. And then it's like, wow, you really got to sort of dig deep to decide, do I want to hang on to this thing or what do I want to do? Right? That's where it kind of gets interesting. So, being down 40K, that can hurt, right? Look, regardless of one's, financial situation, $40,000 in the real world is like a lot of money, right? Let's keep it real. So I'm very, very empathetic and sympathetic to what you're sharing. I don't know if you've dollar cost average down, or where your break even point is at, at this juncture. But I think, if it were me, okay, I'm just going to pretend it's me, I'd be inclined to hang on and see what develops over at least the next quarter or two. Not financial advice. I'm certainly not giving you, investment advice, but I'm just saying, if it were me, I'd probably want to see what happens, because if and when we see, hey, President Trump's going to be inaugurated for a second term, Bitcoin seems to be kind of going up again. Maybe it'll continue to go up now. Maybe we'll start to see a more friendly SEC, right? And we might start to see a bit of a rally in the price of Bitcoin, in hash prices, and in turn in Bitcoin mining companies such as Bitfarms. So again, not investment advice, but if you've come this far into it for about a year or so, maybe give it a couple more months and then reassess. That's the best I could tell you, Good stuff. Thanks for the update. Thank you, Kevin. Okay. And I think that's, apologies if I missed your comment, but listen, at the end of the day, I think we're at a point here where Bitfarms, I think we're all kind of on the same page. We need to see some updates from Bitfarms that show that they're growing exahash and that they're meeting their milestones and that they're getting what has already been talked about actually executed and in place. I think we'd all agree with that. And then, of course, the next step would be to have the, sort of the factors that Bitfarms does not control, right? Like the revenue inputs of hash price, the macro of like the price of Bitcoin going up, having those things be cooperative, I think can also help push, the stock up. I believe somebody on X mentioned that, and again, I forget, I should look, but I mean, I'm doing the broadcast right at the moment here, so I'm not going to kind of turn my attention to X, formerly known as Twitter. But I think somebody said that some company came out with like a price target of like $5 for BitFARMs. I'd have to double check what they wrote. But again, does that sound outlandish? I mean, when we're at $1.66, it could feel like, man, if we could just get back to like $2.50, that'll feel great, right? To at least kind of get up above $2. But I really do think that if this bull market materializes, not only in the price of Bitcoin, but to some degree in hash prices, if we start to see some momentum, if we start to see some positive, things coming from Washington, D.C. as it relates to the Bitcoin ecosystem as a whole, and very important, if we see Bitfarms actually, executing and getting back on track insofar as the milestones which they set forth for the end of 2024, hey, if we could get those milestones achieved sooner rather than later, let's get back on track. I think the stock price has a very, 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 very good chance of not only just getting back on track, but ideally exceeding expectations and starting to really kind of move in a manner that's more commensurate with like a bull market and a bit of a bull run. So, my friends, let's stay positive, let's be great, and let's remember a quote from Jared Leto, apparently, try and fail, but never fail to try. Those are some wise words to live by. Okay, we'll see each other again tomorrow.